You didn't lose yourself by accident. You lost yourself because you spent too long shrinking, pleasing, adapting, and forgetting who you were born to be. Today, that ends. This audiobook is your reset button, a mental reconstruction. Every chapter will pull you back to your truth, your strength, your identity. You will remember who you are, reclaim what you gave away, and rebuild the version of you that never should have been abandoned. This is the moment you stop drifting and start returning home to yourself.
Chapter 1. Stop apologizing for existing. You've been taught your whole life to shrink, to soften your voice, to wait your turn, to make everyone else comfortable, even if it means making yourself disappear. And you don't even notice it anymore, because shrinking becomes a habit. Self-erasing becomes automatic. Apologizing becomes your default mode of survival. But hear this clearly. You do not need permission to be you. Let me say it again, because repetition is how truth breaks through conditioning. You do not need permission to exist, to speak, to take up space, to want more, to become more. This chapter is your wake-up call. This is where you stop apologizing for breathing. This is where you stop living small because someone else benefits from your smallness. And this is where you start finding yourself again. The slow collapse of self. Let's start with how it happens. Not in one moment, not in one explosion, but in small, quiet collapses. You lose yourself every time you hold back a truth to avoid conflict. You lose yourself every time you downplay your achievements so someone else won't feel insecure. You lose yourself every time you let someone cross your boundaries because you're afraid of seeming difficult. And over time, those small collapses become your personality. You forget what you want. You forget what you believe. You forget who you are. You become a shapeshifter, a pleaser, a softer, edited, watered-down version of yourself. And here's the truth. You don't lose yourself in a crisis. You lose yourself in tiny, repeated compromises. That's the key. Not the big betrayals, not the dramatic failures, but the tiny, daily choices where you tell yourself, "It's fine. I don't need this. I don't want to make it a big deal. I don't want them to be upset." But here's the real problem. Every time you protect everyone else's comfort, you sacrifice your own identity. And you've done it for so long that you think it's normal. You think it's being a good person. You think it's polite. You think it keeps the peace. But it doesn't. All it does is turn you into a ghost inside your own life. You have a choice. You always have a choice, and the choice today is simple. Stop apologizing for existing. The visible symptoms of shrinking. Let me show you how this behavior looks in the real world. It looks like saying sorry before you speak, even when you've done nothing wrong. It looks like explaining yourself 3 times to justify a simple decision. It looks like apologizing for your preferences, your needs, your boundaries, your voice. It looks like giving long, soft stories instead of direct statements. It looks like laughing off disrespect because you don't want to create tension. These behaviors seem small. They seem harmless. but they are identity killers. Every unnecessary apology chips away at your confidence. Every moment of over-explaining tells your mind you don't deserve simplicity. Every time you soften your truth, you teach yourself that your voice is dangerous. But it's not about your personality. It's not about being too emotional or too sensitive. It's about discipline. The discipline to stand your ground. The discipline to hold your truth. The discipline to speak without shrinking. Because when you shrink your voice, you shrink your life. When you shrink your identity, you shrink your destiny. And when you shrink your truth, you shrink your future. You have a choice. And yes, I'm going to repeat that until it sinks deep into your bones. Stop hiding who you are. The biggest lie you've been taught is that confidence makes people uncomfortable. No. What makes people uncomfortable is authenticity, because authenticity exposes their own lack of it. But you do not need their permission to be you. You do not need their approval to stand tall. You do not need their validation to claim space. You are allowed to want things. You are allowed to speak clearly. You are allowed to say no without a paragraph of justification. You are allowed to say, "This doesn't work for me." You are allowed to take a different direction. You're not here to ask, you're here to live. And I want you to hear this clearly. Every apology you make for your existence is a betrayal of your identity. But you can reverse it. You can reclaim yourself, and you do it through intentional acts of self-respect. Reclaiming space, the first real step back to yourself. Let's talk about that. Reclaiming space. You don't reclaim yourself with affirmations. You don't reclaim yourself by thinking positive. You reclaim yourself with behavior. That's the key. Behavior rebuilds identity. Action restores self-respect. Here are the self-respect rituals I want you to practice. 1. Speak in full sentences. No softeners. Not, "Sorry, can I just say something?" But, "Here's my perspective." No permission, just truth. 2. Remove the unnecessary apologies. Don't apologize for speaking. Don't apologize for needing space. Don't apologize for existing. Every time you catch yourself saying sorry for no reason, stop. Replace it with a neutral phrase. "Thank you for your patience. That works for me. I understand." You train your mind every time you speak. 3. Claim physical space intentionally. Sit with your shoulders open. Stand tall. Walk with direction. Small physical changes reshape your mental identity. Your posture is a message. Your presence is a boundary. Your body language is a declaration, "I'm here and I'm not shrinking anymore." 4. Set one boundary a day. Not 10, just one. Say no once. Ask for clarity once. Hold your line once. You build identity through repetition, brick by brick, boundary by boundary. The shift happens when you decide it does. Here's the truth. Reclaiming yourself isn't complicated. It's uncomfortable, yes, but not complicated. It's not about perfection. It's about discipline. It's about choice. It's about refusing to disappear again. And the moment you stop apologizing for existing, something powerful happens. Your voice comes back, your confidence returns, your identity reawakens. You begin to recognize yourself again. Not the edited version, not the softened version, not the version you created to make others feel safe. The real you, the unfiltered you, the you that has been waiting quietly beneath the layers of apology and self-erasure. And once you meet that version again, you will never want to lose them. Conclusion and transition. This is where your comeback begins, not with loudness, not with aggression, but with self-respect, with claiming space, with refusing to disappear. You do not need permission to be you. Remember that. Repeat it. Live it. You've taken the first step back to yourself. Now, let's go deeper. You stopped apologizing. Now you're ready to understand the real moment you disconnected from your identity.
Chapter 2. Identify the moment you disconnected from yourself. There is always a moment, a specific season, a specific event, a specific wound. People don't just lose themselves. They disconnect. They unplug. They step away from who they are because something broke them, frightened them, or convinced them that being their real self was unsafe. And if you want to find yourself again, you must be brutally honest about when that separation happened. Because here's the truth you need to hear on repeat. You can't rebuild until you admit where the break happened. That's the key. You can't fix what you refuse to look at. You can't return to yourself until you identify the moment you walked away. This chapter is not about blame. It's about clarity. Clarity is discipline. Clarity is power. Clarity is the foundation of rebuilding your identity from the ground up. When did you step away from yourself? Let's go deeper. Think of your life like a long timeline. Somewhere on that timeline, there's a crack, a fracture, a turning point. There is a version of you before the break, confident, open, expressive. And there is a version of you after the break, guarded, cautious, hesitant. I want you to find the exact moment, or at least the season, the event, the shift. Because identity doesn't vanish at random. Identity gets buried under pain, pressure, or someone else's expectations. You have a choice right now. Either keep pretending you just changed, or be honest about when the disconnection started. You already know the answer. You feel it in your body when you think about it. You feel the heaviness. You feel the memory. You feel the version of you that got left behind. And that's the key. That feeling is the doorway back to yourself. The usual breaking points. People lose themselves in predictable ways. Let me show you the most common ones. 1. Heartbreak. The identity fracture you didn't recover from. You gave someone your whole heart, your whole time, your whole identity. And when it ended, you didn't just lose the relationship, you lost yourself. You became scared to love, scared to trust, scared to be seen again. You decided that being the real you was too risky, so you disconnected. 2. Failure. The moment that convinced you that you weren't enough. Maybe you took a big chance, a dream, a goal, a risk, and it didn't work. It collapsed. And instead of rebuilding, you shrank. You told yourself, I'll stay small. It's safer here. But smallness isn't safety. Smallness is self-abandonment. You stepped away from yourself because failure embarrassed you, but listen closely. It's not about failure. It's about discipline. Discipline to return. Discipline to try again. Discipline to rebuild. 3. Betrayal. The moment someone broke your trust so deeply, you started doubting yourself. You were loyal. You were genuine. You were real. And someone lied. Someone used you. Someone took advantage of you. And the worst part? You blamed yourself. You thought, if I was smarter, this wouldn't have happened. So, you disconnected. You became hyper-aware, hyper-controlled, hyper-protective. But protecting yourself by abandoning yourself is not protection, it's punishment. 4. Burnout. The slow erosion of identity through constant survival mode. You worked too hard for too long. You lived in stress. You lived in tension. You lived in a state of emergency. And eventually, you felt nothing. No excitement, no passion, no clarity. Burnout doesn't just drain energy. Burnout erases identity. When you're exhausted long enough, you forget who you were before you started surviving. 5. Toxic environments. The slow death of identity through constant invalidation. Maybe it was your home. Maybe it was your workplace. Maybe it was your relationship. When you spend too much time around people who constantly criticize, dismiss, or belittle you, you start to shrink. You start to adapt. You start to survive by becoming smaller. But shrinking is not surviving. Shrinking is disconnecting. And again, hear it clearly. You can't rebuild until you admit where the break happened. That's the anchor. That's the command. That's the truth you cannot skip. The cost of not identifying the moment. If you refuse to look back, you will repeat the same patterns. You will keep choosing people who hurt you. You will keep sabotaging yourself. You will keep accepting less. You will keep living small. Avoidance is expensive. Avoidance steals your potential. Avoidance keeps you stuck in the same story. Avoidance keeps you disconnected. This chapter is not asking you to relive your pain. This chapter is asking you to recognize the origin of your pain so you can reclaim your identity. It's not about drowning in the past. It's about identifying the exact moment you walked away from yourself so you can walk back. You have a choice. You can keep pretending nothing happened, or you can face the truth and free yourself. That's the key. Not denial, not avoidance, but clarity. How to trace the moment you lost yourself. Let's make this practical. 1. Ask yourself, when did I stop feeling like me? Your body knows the answer. Your mind knows the answer. Your memory knows the answer. There is a moment that still stings. A moment that still echoes. A moment that still hurts. That is your starting point. Look for the shift in your behavior. Did you become quieter? More anxious? More pleasing? More careful? More closed off? Behavior doesn't lie. Behavior reveals the fracture. Look for the moment you made a silent promise to yourself. You know the one. I won't trust like that again. I won't love like that again. I won't try like that again. I won't speak like that again. Those promises protect you from pain, but they also disconnect you from your identity. Identify the version of you that disappeared. What qualities did you have before the break? Confidence, curiosity, creativity, playfulness, courage. Those qualities didn't die. They just got buried. And you can uncover them again, but only if you acknowledge the moment they were hidden. The turning point. Honesty. This chapter is about honesty. Honesty is the doorway to transformation. Honesty is discipline. Honesty is the beginning of self-return. If you skip this step, you stay lost. If you deny the moment, you stay disconnected. If you avoid the truth, you stay small. But if you face it, really face it, everything changes. Because clarity gives you power. Clarity gives you direction. Clarity gives you the ability to rebuild your identity intentionally. Remember the core truth. You can't rebuild until you admit where the break happened. Say it again. Feel it again. Accept it again. That's the key.
Chapter 3. Silence the voices that don't belong to you. There is a moment in every person's life where their own voice gets drowned out. Not because it disappeared, not because it was weak, but because too many other voices got louder. Family, society, friends, people you wanted to impress, people you didn't want to disappoint. People who never lived your life but somehow convinced you they knew what was best for you. This chapter is about reclaiming your voice. This chapter is about the moment you finally say, enough. This chapter is about silencing the voices that never belonged to you in the first place. Because here's the truth. You can't find yourself if you're living for someone else. You have a choice. That's the key. The noise that replaced your truth. Let's start with the obvious. Most people don't lose themselves through a dramatic collapse. They lose themselves through slow erosion. A comment here, a judgment there, a raised eyebrow, a disapproving tone. You should do this. You better not do that. Be realistic. Don't embarrass us. These things add up, and eventually you stop asking what you want. You start asking what they'll approve of. Your inner voice gets buried under their expectations. But here's the key. You don't need their permission. You never did. You just forgot that. When you start living for validation, you stop living with intention. When you start chasing approval, you abandon your own identity. And when you let society script your life, you become a character in someone else's story. And that is the fastest way to disconnect from yourself. Your job is to reverse that. Your job is to shut off the noise. Your job is to come home to your inner voice. Repeat it. Remove the noise. Return to your inner voice. How external voices take over. Let's break down the mechanics of this, because once you understand it, you can take control of it. There are 3 major sources of noise. 1. Family expectations. Family means well, but their well isn't always aligned with your truth. Some families want safety. Some want prestige. Some want obedience. Some want you to carry the dreams they never achieved. And if you're not careful, you end up living a life designed for their comfort, not your growth. But listen closely. You have a choice. You can love your family without living their script. You can honor them without abandoning yourself. That's the key. 2. Society's blueprint. Society doesn't know you. Society doesn't care about your truth. Society only cares that you fit the mold. Go to school, get a job, follow the timeline. Don't question anything. Don't want too much.
Don't be too different. And if you don't obey, you're labeled lost, rebellious, unrealistic, immature, or selfish. But here's the irony. Society calls you lost the moment you start trying to find yourself. That's why you cannot let it be your compass. Repeat it again. Remove the noise. Return to your inner voice. 3. Friends and social pressure. Friends are tricky. Some support you, some celebrate you, but others fear your growth because it threatens their comfort. When you start wanting more for your life, they say, "You've changed. You're acting different. You think you're better?" Or the classic one, "Just be normal." But here's the truth. They want you to shrink because your growth exposes their stagnation. And you don't need their permission to evolve. That's the key. Living for validation is a trap. Let's get brutally honest. You can spend your entire life trying to keep everyone happy, trying to be agreeable, trying to be admired, trying to be accepted. But in the end, you'll look in the mirror and realize you never accepted yourself. You became what they wanted, not who you are, not who you could have been, not who you were meant to become. And here's the dangerous part. Validation feels good. Approval feels addicting. Praise feels like oxygen. But if you need external applause to make decisions, you're not living, you're performing. And performers lose themselves. Every single time. So ask yourself, whose dream are you chasing? Whose standards are you trying to meet? Whose life are you living? Because if the answer isn't yours, then you already know what the problem is. The discipline of silencing the noise. Let's shift into action, because this chapter is not just about understanding. It's about transformation. It's about what you do differently starting today. Here's the instruction. You need to create distance. Distance from the voices. Distance from the pressure. Distance from the noise. You cannot hear your inner voice when you're surrounded by people who talk over it. So here is the discipline. 1. Take a day of isolation. No opinions, no voices, no input. Just you. It will feel uncomfortable at first. That's the addiction to external validation leaving your system. 2. Ask one question. What do I want if no one else gets a vote? Answer honestly. That question exposes the truth. That question reveals the buried voice. That question brings you home. 3. Identify the noisy voices. Family pressure, friend expectations, cultural rules. List them, name them, see them clearly. Because once you name the noise, you can silence it. And 4. Practice the command. Say it daily. Say it hourly if needed. Remove the noise. Return to your inner voice. That is your reset button. That is your compass. That is your anchor. Your identity returns when the noise stops. That's how it works. Your identity wasn't lost. It was drowned. It was buried under expectations, pressure, and fear. Silence the noise, and your inner voice will return. It always does. Because your identity never leaves you. You just stopped listening. And the moment you start listening again, everything shifts. Clarity comes back. Strength comes back. Direction comes back. Self-respect comes back. You begin to trust yourself again. You begin to feel like yourself again. You begin to be yourself again. That's the real transformation. That's the path back home. Final command of this chapter. If you take nothing else from this chapter, take this. Your inner voice is the only voice that knows where you're meant to go. Protect it. Honor it. Listen to it every day, every decision, every moment. Repeat one last time. Remove the noise. Return to your inner voice. You shut out the world. You returned to your truth. Now you're ready for the next step. You reclaimed your voice. Now it's time to rebuild your identity.
Chapter 4. Reclaim your inner standards. There's a simple truth most people never want to face. You didn't just lose yourself. You lowered your standards. And that's why everything fell apart. Identity isn't destroyed in a single moment. Identity fades when standards fade. It happens slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. You stop demanding excellence from yourself, and you start accepting the bare minimum. Then, one day, you wake up and wonder why you no longer recognize the person staring back at you. Let me be blunt. Your standards are your identity. If your standards drop, your identity drops with them. If your standards rise, your identity rises too. You have a choice. That's the key. This chapter is about taking your standards back. Not the ones society set, not the ones other people expect. The ones you know you were built for. The ones that used to define you. The ones that still live inside you, waiting to be activated again. Because here's the reality. When you lost your standards, you lost your direction. When you lost your standards, you lost your confidence. When you lost your standards, you lost your self-respect. It's time to reverse that. It's time to rebuild from the inside out. How you lost yourself when you lowered your standards. You didn't just fade. You didn't just drift. You didn't just disconnect. You let your standards slip. And when standards slip, identity collapses. Think about it. You used to care about showing up on time. Then you stopped. You used to care about your health. Then you stopped. You used to care about how you spoke to yourself. Then you let the negativity run wild. You used to care about how people treated you. Then you accepted less and told yourself it was fine. It wasn't fine. It was the beginning of losing yourself. It's not about laziness. It's about discipline. It's not about lack of motivation. It's about lack of standards. It's not about failure. It's about self-abandonment. That's the key. When you stop demanding more from yourself, you stop becoming more. And when you stop becoming more, you lose your identity. Your standards were never optional. They were the foundation of who you are. And you can reclaim them, starting today, because you have a choice. The 5 standards you must rebuild. Let's get into specifics, because this chapter is not about theory. It's about transformation, real change, real discipline, real identity.
There are 5 core standards you must reclaim if you want your identity back. 1. Health standards, the way you treat your body. Your body is the physical expression of your standards, not the shape, not the size, not the aesthetics. The habits, the discipline, the respect. When you stopped caring about your health, your sleep, your nutrition, your movement, you weakened the foundation of your identity. You don't need a perfect body. You need consistent discipline. That's the key. Your body follows your standards. Raise the standards, and the body follows. Lower the standards, and the body collapses. Repeat it. Your standards are your identity. 2. Time standards, the way you use your hours. If you want to know who someone is, look at how they spend their time. When you started wasting hours scrolling, procrastinating, numbing yourself, or distracting yourself, your identity slipped away with every wasted minute. Time is your mirror. It reflects your standards back at you. You have a choice every single day. Are you building yourself or avoiding yourself? That's the key. Raise your time standards. Protect your hours like your life depends on it, because it does. Every wasted hour is a piece of your identity thrown away. 3. Boundary standards, what you allow and what you reject. Your boundaries tell the world who you are. When your boundaries weaken, your identity weakens. You used to say no. You used to protect your energy. You used to enforce your limits. Then you stopped. Then you let people take advantage. Then you accepted disrespect. Then you tolerated chaos. Then you convinced yourself it was normal. But it wasn't normal. It was a sign that your standards had collapsed. You don't need their permission to set boundaries. You don't need their approval to protect yourself. Boundaries are not confrontation. Boundaries are self-respect. Raise them. Reinforce them. Stand on them. Because your boundaries are your identity. 4. Self-talk standards, the voice you listen to. Your internal dialogue is the most powerful force shaping your identity. When you let the inner critic speak louder than the inner leader, your standards collapsed. When you allowed thoughts like, I can't, I'm not good enough, I'll fail, what's the point? You rewired your identity into weakness. But here's the truth. The inner critic is not the problem. The problem is that you let it run the show. You have a choice about which voice you feed. You have a choice about which voice you believe. You have a choice about which voice becomes your identity. It's not about positivity. It's about discipline. Discipline in how you speak to yourself. Discipline in what you allow in your mind. Discipline in the standards of your internal voice. Repeat it. Your standards are your identity. 5. Discipline standards, what you expect from yourself daily. Discipline is the engine of identity, not motivation, not inspiration, not emotion. Discipline. When your discipline dropped, your identity followed. When you stopped pushing yourself, you stopped trusting yourself. When you stopped following through, you stopped believing in yourself. Discipline is not about perfection. Discipline is about consistency. Showing up, doing the work, even when you don't feel like it. Especially when you don't feel like it. Because discipline is the purest form of self-respect. It's not about talent. It's about discipline. It's not about mood. It's about discipline. That's the key. Raise your discipline standards, and you rebuild the core of who you are. Reclaiming your standards rebuilds your identity. Let's bring this home. You didn't just lose yourself. You abandoned the standards that defined you, and now you're reclaiming them, one decision at a time. Every boundary you reinforce rebuilds your identity. Every hour you protect rebuilds your identity. Every healthy choice rebuilds your identity. Every disciplined action rebuilds your identity. Every positive word to yourself rebuilds your identity. This is how you come back to yourself. Not through luck, not through waiting, not through wishing, through standards, through discipline, through choices. Because your standards are your identity. Raise them and you rise. Lower them and you fall. You have a choice. And now you know the key.
Chapter 5. Break the habit of disappearing into others. There's a moment in life when you realize something painful. You didn't just get lost, you disappeared. Into other people. Into their wants. Into their expectations. Into their chaos. Into their identity. And here's the truth most people avoid. You didn't lose yourself accidentally. You lost yourself because you kept choosing everyone else over you. This chapter is about ending that habit, ending that pattern, ending that cycle. Because nothing destroys identity faster than merging with others until you no longer exist as an individual. Say it with me. Choose yourself before you fade again. That's the anchor. That's the command. That's the key. Why you disappear into others. People don't disappear into others because they're weak. They disappear because they're afraid. Afraid to be alone. Afraid to disappoint. Afraid to be independent. Afraid to let people walk away. Afraid to stand out. Afraid to be misunderstood. So, they merge. They mold. They shapeshift. They soften their edges. They shrink their needs. They silence their voice. All to keep the peace. All to keep people close. But here's the truth. When you sacrifice who you are to keep people, you don't keep them. You only lose yourself. You have a choice every single time to keep yourself first or lose yourself again. That's the key. How disappearing happens. Quiet, subtle, slow. Identity doesn't shatter loudly. It dissolves quietly, gradually, piece by piece. Let me show you exactly how it happens. 1. You start over-investing. You give too much. You care too much. You show up too much. You take responsibility for what isn't yours. You tell yourself you're being loving. You tell yourself you're being supportive. But what's really happening, you're using their life to avoid your own. Your goals get replaced by their goals. Your priorities get replaced by their priorities. Your dreams get delayed for theirs. And every time you do this, you fade a little more. You have a choice. Choose yourself before you fade again.
2. You become emotionally dependent. This one is subtle. It never feels like dependency at the start. It feels like closeness. It feels like connection. But then it crosses a line. Suddenly, your mood depends on them. Your peace depends on them. Your confidence depends on them. Your sense of worth depends on them. That's not connection. That's erasure. That's losing yourself in someone else's emotional weather. It's not about love, it's about discipline. Discipline in staying grounded in yourself. Discipline in not outsourcing your emotional identity. Choose yourself before you fade again. 3. You give them more authority than yourself. This is one of the most common ways identity disappears. You start trusting their opinion more than your own. You start believing their criticism over your inner wisdom. You start letting their voice override yours. Suddenly, you're asking for permission before making a decision. Suddenly, you're second-guessing everything you once knew. Suddenly, you no longer trust your own judgment. When you hand someone else authority over your life, you hand them your identity. You don't need their permission to exist. You don't need their validation to think. You don't need their approval to choose. You have a choice. That's the key. Why merging with others erases your identity? Because identity is built on boundaries. When the boundaries dissolve, the identity dissolves. Here's the formula you must remember. When you lose your edges, you lose yourself. When you stop distinguishing your needs from theirs. When you stop honoring your personal priorities. When you stop protecting your time, your energy, your goals. When you start living through other people's emotions, problems, or expectations. You stop being a person. You become an extension, a reflection, a placeholder. And that's when the fading begins. That's when the disappearing begins. But this is the moment you stop it. Right here, right now. Say it again. Choose yourself before you fade again. The 3 habits you must break today. Let's get practical. Let's get direct. This chapter is not about understanding. It's about transformation. These are the 3 habits that destroy identity, and the 3 habits you must eliminate if you want to find yourself again. Habit 1. Over-involvement in other people's lives. Stop trying to save everyone. Stop trying to fix everything. Stop trying to carry emotional weight that doesn't belong to you. Every time you overfunction for someone else, you underfunction in your own life. You have a choice. Reclaim your time. Reclaim your goals. Reclaim your priorities. Build your life first, then support others from overflow, not depletion. That's the key. Habit 2. Emotional fusion. When your emotions become tied to someone else's emotional state, you lose agency. If they're upset, you're upset. If they're distant, you panic. If they're insecure, you become unstable. If they pull away, you collapse. That is emotional fusion. That's self-erasure. That's losing yourself in someone else's emotional weather. It's not about love, it's about discipline. Discipline in staying grounded in yourself. Discipline in not outsourcing your emotional identity. Choose yourself before you fade again. Habit 3. Over-accommodation. This is one of the biggest identity killers. You say yes when you mean no. You overextend yourself. You downplay your needs. You hide your preferences. You compromise your standards for temporary harmony. That's self-abandonment. That's identity decay. It's not about being easygoing. It's about discipline. Discipline in honoring your truth. Discipline in protecting your peace. Discipline in standing firm. You don't need their permission to take up space. You don't need their permission to speak up. You don't need their permission to exist fully. You have a choice. That's the key. Rebuilding your identity through self-presence. So, how do you stop disappearing into others? By practicing consistent self-presence. Here's the formula. Your needs first. Your voice first. Your standards first. Your time first. Not because you're selfish, but because you're responsible for yourself. Every time you choose yourself, you strengthen your identity. Every time you choose yourself, you reinforce your self-respect. Every time you choose yourself, you return to who you were meant to be.
Say it again. Choose yourself before you fade again. Closing the chapter. You've broken the pattern today. You've exposed the habit. You've taken responsibility for the ways you disappeared into others. And now you're choosing yourself again. Not once, not occasionally, but daily, consistently, intentionally. You're rebuilding your edges. You're rebuilding your voice. You're rebuilding your identity. And now that you've stopped fading into others, it's time to learn something even more powerful: how to rebuild trust with yourself. Because identity isn't just about not disappearing. It's about becoming someone you can depend on. Chapter 6. Heal the parts you keep avoiding. You can't find yourself if you keep running from yourself. You can't build a new identity while dragging the same old wounds behind you. And you know this. You felt it. Every time life gets quiet, the past gets loud. Every time you slow down, your wounds speak up. And instead of facing them, you've learned to avoid them. But here's the truth you can't outrun. Unhealed wounds distort your perception. They twist your reflection. They disconnect you from who you really are. You start believing you're broken when you're just unhealed. You start believing you're weak when you're just overwhelmed. You start believing you're lost when you're actually avoiding the one place you don't want to go: inside. That's the root of it. Not failure, not bad luck. Avoidance. What you avoid controls you. What you face frees you. That's the key. Unhealed wounds don't sit quietly. They whisper lies. They shape your reactions. They make you overthink, doubt yourself, sabotage opportunities, and cling to people who don't deserve you, all because your internal map is outdated. You're navigating life with emotional fog, emotional confusion, emotional distortion. You can't understand your present when you refuse to confront your past. You have a choice: run from the pain or reclaim your life. And here's the hard truth. Most people don't heal because staying hurt feels familiar. Staying broken feels safe. Staying stuck feels predictable. Healing requires responsibility. Healing requires honesty. Healing requires sitting with the parts of yourself you've ignored for years. You avoid, you distract, you numb. You call it coping, but it's just hiding with better branding. Some people escape through emotional numbness, pretending they don't care,
acting like nothing affects them, shutting down anything that threatens to crack the armor. Some escape through productivity, staying so busy they never have to stop and feel. Some escape through overworking, chasing accomplishment because silence would force reflection. Some escape through constant distraction, scrolling, consuming, overstimulating themselves to stay disconnected. Avoidance looks different for everyone, but the consequences? Exactly the same. You drift. You disconnect. You lose your center. You forget what you want. You forget who you are. You can't outrun what's inside you. You can only delay the confrontation. And the longer you delay it, the more control it has over your life. What you avoid controls you. What you face frees you. Think about it. How many decisions have you made from fear instead of clarity? How many times have you pulled back because you didn't trust yourself? How many relationships have you tolerated just because loneliness reminded you of something painful? How many opportunities have you sabotaged because your past conditioned you to expect disappointment? These aren't random patterns, they're clues. Wounds trying to speak. Experiences begging to be acknowledged. Parts of you knocking on the door saying, "Face me so we can finally move on." But you've been trained to run, to keep moving, to never stop long enough to feel. It's not about being strong. It's about being honest. People act like healing is soft. It isn't. Healing is confrontation. Healing is war. Healing is the moment you look at the thing that broke you and say, "You don't get to run my life anymore." That's the key. You don't need permission to stop. You don't need permission to feel. You don't need permission to heal. It starts with one decision: to stop avoiding the parts you're afraid to face. So let's break it down. 1. Acknowledge the wound. You can't heal what you won't name. Maybe it was betrayal. Maybe it was neglect. Maybe it was a failure that left a scar. Maybe it was rejection that rewired your self-worth. Be honest about it. Say it out loud if you must. You hurt me. That changed me. I've been carrying this for too long. This is not weakness. This is clarity. 2. Stop distracting yourself. The reason you stay busy is because silence threatens your comfort zone. The reason you constantly scroll is because stillness exposes what you've been avoiding. The reason you numb your emotions is because feeling them would force growth. But here's the truth you can't outrun. Distraction keeps you stuck. Distraction steals years. Distraction keeps you from becoming the person you know you can be. You have a choice. Stay comfortable or get better. 3. Sit with the pain. Don't run from it. This is where most people quit. It's easier to move on. It's easier to bury it. It's easier to pretend nothing happened. But what you avoid doesn't disappear. It just gets louder. It starts controlling your fears, your triggers, your reactions, your identity. Sit with the discomfort long enough to understand it. That's how you reclaim power. That's how you stop letting the past define your present. 4. Rewrite the story. Your wound is not your identity. Your past is not your destiny. You get to decide what it means now. Maybe it taught you resilience. Maybe it shaped your strength. Maybe it built your empathy. Maybe it pushed you toward growth. You don't need their permission to redefine it. You don't need their apology to move forward. You don't need closure to rise. You only need discipline, because it's not about being damaged, it's about being determined. 5. Practice daily healing discipline. Healing isn't one moment. It's a routine, a mindset,
a commitment. Journal, reflect, detach, let go, forgive, not for them, but for yourself. Discipline is the bridge between hurt and healed. That's the key. And every day you face what you've avoided, you take your identity back piece by piece. Every day you sit with your emotions, you rebuild self-trust. Every day you stop running, you reconnect with the real you. Because what you avoid controls you. What you face frees you. Repeat it. Live it. Embody it. You can't find yourself without healing yourself. You can't heal yourself without honesty. You can't be honest without courage. And you already have the courage. You're here. You're listening. You're ready.
This chapter is the turning point. This is where you stop being at war with your own mind. This is where you stop abandoning yourself. This is where you reclaim the pieces you buried. You want your identity back? Heal the parts you keep avoiding. That's the work. That's the path. That's the key. You've confronted your wounds. Now it's time to protect your energy.
Chapter 7. Rebuild yourself through daily solitude. There is a version of you that you haven't met yet. A stronger version, a calmer version, a wiser version. And the only way you meet that version is through solitude. Not isolation, not loneliness. Solitude. The deliberate, disciplined practice of sitting with yourself long enough to hear your own mind again. Most people fear solitude because they fear what they'll hear. They fear the truth. They fear the feelings they've been avoiding. They fear the responsibility that comes when the noise finally stops. But here's the truth. You cannot rebuild yourself in chaos. You cannot find clarity in constant distraction. You cannot find identity in environments filled with noise, people, and pressure. Solitude is medicine. Solitude is where your real self returns. Solitude is where your identity rebuilds without interference. That's the key. Every transformation begins in silence. Every breakthrough comes when the world quiets and the mind finally speaks. Every major shift in your life happens because of a moment alone, a moment where you finally hear what you've been running from. You have a choice: stay distracted and stay lost, or step into solitude and rebuild. Let's make this clear. You don't need their permission. You don't need their approval. You don't need their understanding. You need solitude. You need stillness. You need space. Because you find yourself in the quiet, never in the noise. Noise keeps you reactive. Noise keeps you overstimulated. Noise keeps you disconnected from your intuition, your instincts, and your truth. Noise is the enemy of identity, and you've been drowning in it through other people's opinions, expectations, demands, judgments, and endless digital distraction. You want to find yourself again? Step away from the noise. Reclaim your mind. This is where daily solitude comes in. Not once a month, not once a year, daily. Small pockets of silence that realign your mind and rebuild your inner center. Let's break down the practices, the actual behaviors that transform you from lost to locked in, from scattered to centered. 1. Morning silence, the reset you've been avoiding. The first minutes of your day determine your direction. Most people wake up and grab their phone. They consume noise before they even take a breath. They let the world's agenda hijack their peace before they create their own. But not you. Not anymore. Your new rule is simple. No noise before your mind is ready.
Sit in silence. Sit with your breath. Sit with your thoughts before they're contaminated by the outside world. You have a choice. Start reactive or start intentional. That's the key. Morning solitude builds identity. Morning solitude reconnects you with your inner compass. Morning solitude protects you from the emotional chaos of the day. If you want to rebuild yourself, start with silence when the world is still asleep. Because you find yourself in the quiet, never in the noise. 2. Solo walks, movement with meaning. A walk alone is one of the most powerful self-healing tools you have. No headphones, no conversations, no distractions. Just steps, just breath, just presence. Solo walks create mental space. They allow your mind to process, release pressure, and reorganize itself. They remind you that you are a human being, not a machine. This is where solutions appear. This is where overthinking dissolves. This is where self-trust grows. When you walk alone, your thinking sharpens. Your emotions settle. Your identity strengthens. It's not about the walk. It's about the discipline. The discipline to step away from constant stimulation and let your inner voice rise. Because you find yourself in the quiet, never in the noise. 3. Digital detox breaks. Protect your mental breathing space. Your devices are the greatest source of noise in your life. They steal your attention. They drain your energy. They bury your intuition under endless stimulation. You scroll to avoid boredom. You scroll to avoid feelings. You scroll because silence makes you uncomfortable. But here is your new truth. Silence is where you rebuild. Silence is where you recalibrate. Silence is where you remember who you are. You have a choice. Continue numbing yourself or create space to grow. Digital detox breaks aren't optional. They are survival. They are mental hygiene. They are identity repair. Set blocks of time where the phone goes away. Start small, 10 minutes, then 20, then an hour, then entire evenings. Your mind needs rest. Your identity needs clarity. Your future needs discipline. Because it's not about being disconnected. It's about being in control. You don't need their permission to unplug. You don't need their validation for choosing peace. Your solitude is your responsibility. And remember, you find yourself in the quiet, never in the noise. 4. Sit with yourself sessions, the hardest practice of all. Sit. No music, no phone, no task, no distraction. Just sit with yourself. Sit with your thoughts. Sit with your emotions. Sit long enough for the internal chaos to settle and the real voice inside you to emerge. You avoid this because it exposes you. It reveals everything you've been ignoring. It forces honesty. It forces responsibility. But that's exactly why it works. That's exactly why it's essential. That's exactly why it rebuilds you from the inside out. Because you cannot find yourself if you never slow down long enough to be with yourself. Identity grows in stillness. Strength grows in silence. Clarity grows in solitude. That's the key. 5. Evening decompression. Ending the day with your own mind. Your nights determine whether you heal. Most people collapse into bed with noise still buzzing in their mind, scrolling, watching, consuming. But the day isn't complete until you return to yourself. Reflect, release, recenter. Ask the questions that rebuild identity. What did I feel today? What did I avoid today? What did I learn today? What can I do better tomorrow? Solitude isn't a luxury. It's a necessity. It's the foundation of self-awareness, self-mastery, and self-respect. And the message is simple. You find yourself in the quiet, never in the noise. You rediscover your strength in silence. You rebuild your discipline in solitude. You reconnect with your identity when the world fades and your inner world finally speaks. This chapter is your reminder. You don't rebuild by being everywhere. You rebuild by returning to yourself. Piece by piece, day by day, quiet moment by quiet moment. Healing happens in solitude. Growth happens in solitude. Rebirth happens in solitude. And you have a choice. Use solitude to strengthen yourself, or avoid it and stay lost. You're ready for more. You're ready for discipline. You're ready to rebuild from the inside out. You've learned how to sit with yourself. Now you'll learn how to break the cycles that keep dragging you backwards.
Chapter 8. Redefine yourself through action, not imagination. There's a hard truth you must swallow right now. You don't become a new person by thinking about it. You don't transform by talking about it. You don't change your life by imagining a better version of yourself. You change through action. Disciplined action. Consistent action. Relentless action. Identity is a verb. Identity is what you do. That's the key. Most people live in their head. They fantasize about the life they want. They daydream about the person they could be. They imagine strength, confidence, discipline, purpose. But imagination without action is self-deception. It's mental entertainment. It feels good for a moment, but changes nothing. You have a choice today. Stay addicted to the fantasy of self-improvement, or build the reality through action. It's not about intention. It's about discipline. It's not about desire. It's about execution. It's not about feeling ready. It's about doing the work anyway. Identity is built through the small, repeated behaviors you commit to daily. Not someday. Not eventually. Not when you feel motivated. Daily. That's the key. Let's get brutally honest. You've already imagined the life you want. You've already pictured the person you want to become. You know exactly who you could be at full power. But knowing isn't enough. Understanding isn't enough. Self-awareness isn't enough. Self-awareness without action becomes self-sabotage. Because once you see who you could be, you feel the weight of not becoming them. You feel the gap between potential and reality. You feel the tension of living below your own expectations. That's why you must act. That's why you must build. That's why you must choose discipline over fantasy. You don't need their permission. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need all the steps lined up. You need action. And action starts now. Let me make this clear. Every breakthrough in your life will come from behavior, not belief. You can think powerful thoughts all day, but if your actions are weak, your identity stays weak. You can talk a bold game, but if your habits are inconsistent, your life remains inconsistent. Identity is built through what you repeatedly do, not what you repeatedly wish for. That's the key.
Let's talk about real people who transformed themselves, not because they found clarity, but because they acted. There's the man who was lost, depressed, and drifting. No passion, no direction, no energy. He didn't wait for motivation. He didn't wait for confidence. He laced up his shoes and started walking every morning. 10 minutes, then 20, then a mile, then 3. He built discipline before he built belief. And that discipline became a new identity. Identity is a verb. Identity is what you do. There's the woman who struggled with anxiety and self-doubt. She tried journaling, she tried meditation, she tried affirmations, but nothing changed until she changed the one thing that mattered: her actions. She started saying no. She started setting boundaries. She started choosing herself even when it felt uncomfortable. She didn't think her way into strength. She acted her way into it. Identity is a verb. Identity is what you do. Then there's the friend who wanted to be more confident socially. He didn't read 10 books on confidence. He didn't analyze every insecurity. He didn't wait for the perfect moment. He approached one stranger a day, then 2, then 10. Awkward, shaky, imperfect, but consistent. Confidence didn't come from studying confidence. It came from acting confident when he didn't feel confident. Identity is a verb. Identity is what you do. And now, it's your turn. Your reinvention requires action. Your transformation demands movement. Your new identity is waiting on the other side of disciplined habits. But here's the truth you've been avoiding. Your old habits are keeping your old identity alive. Your lack of action is keeping your potential locked inside. Your imagination is comforting you more than it's transforming you. So stop imagining the life you want. Start building it. Start with one habit, one action, one discipline. Because action is proof. Action is momentum. Action is identity. You want to become someone new? Act like someone new. Even when it feels fake, even when you don't believe it yet, even when your past tries to pull you backward. Your actions rewrite your belief system. Your habits rewire your brain. Your discipline rebuilds your identity. Let's get tactical now. You need behaviors that reinforce the identity you want. 1. The identity habit rule. Start with one behavior that confirms who you want to become. Want to be disciplined? Wake up at the same time every day. Want to be healthier? Walk for 15 minutes daily. Want to be mentally stronger? Sit in silence every morning before checking your phone. Want self-respect? Speak to yourself with power, not weakness. One habit, repeated daily, anchored into your identity. That's the key. 2. The action before emotion rule. Don't wait to feel like it. If you wait for motivation, you'll wait forever. If you wait for clarity, you'll stay confused. If you wait for confidence, you'll stay insecure. Act first. Feel later. You have a choice. Be controlled by emotion or be driven by discipline. It's not about feeling ready. It's about doing what builds you. Identity is a verb. Identity is what you do. 3. The accountability rule. Track your actions, not your thoughts. Write it down.
Check it off. Measure your behavior. Not your ideas, not your intentions, not your mood. Behavior builds identity. Records reinforce identity. Consistency cements identity. That's the key. 4. The kill the fantasy rule. Replace dreaming with doing. Every time you catch yourself fantasizing about change, replace it with one action toward change. Dream less, do more, because imagination can inspire you, but only action can transform you. Identity is a verb. Identity is what you do. This chapter is a turning point, because now you understand the truth. You're not defined by your thoughts. You're defined by your behaviors. You're defined by the actions you repeat, the choices you make, the discipline you show. You have a choice today. Choose action over imagination. Choose discipline over excuses. Choose the identity you want, not the one you inherited. You've learned how to act your way into a new self. Now it's time to build the environment that protects that identity.
Chapter 9. Recreate your future without apology or permission. Your future is not a continuation of your past. Your future is not a reflection of your mistakes. Your future is not determined by who failed you, who doubted you, or who tried to control you. Your future is a creation. Your creation. Built by intention. Built by discipline. Built by choice. The future belongs to the version of you that you choose today. That's the key. But here's the problem. Most people drag their past into their future like a heavy bag of old identities, old labels, old stories, old wounds, old limitations. They recreate the same life again and again because they never question the identity they inherited. They don't design, they repeat. They don't choose, they react. They don't build, they drift. You have a choice. You can stay loyal to the identity the world gave you, or you can create the identity you want. You don't need their permission. You never did. You never will. This chapter is about freedom, real freedom, not emotional freedom, not theoretical freedom, but the freedom to decide who you will be from this day forward. Because your history does not define your identity. Your discipline does. Your decisions do. Your standards do. It's not about who you were. It's about who you choose to become. That's the key. Let's start with intention. Most people live without it. They wake up and slip into autopilot. Same thoughts, same routines, same reactions, same patterns, same outcomes. But intention breaks the cycle. Intention is the moment you say, I'm not living by memory anymore. I'm living by design. Your future is clay, moldable, flexible, unwritten. But you must shape it deliberately. You must build it consciously. You must choose the identity you step into every morning. The future belongs to the version of you that you choose today. Think about this. Every label you've been carrying, too emotional, too quiet, too lost, too sensitive, too intense, too inconsistent, came from someone else's limited perspective. Those labels survive if you continue to act like they're true. They die the moment you choose a new identity. You don't need their permission to rewrite your story. You don't need your past's approval to outgrow it. That's the key. Let's break this down into real, practical identity rewriting. 1. Reject the old labels. They don't belong to your future. If a label doesn't empower you, it doesn't belong to you. Simple. Were you called lazy? Then discipline becomes your new standard. Were you called emotional? Then emotional control becomes your weapon. Were you called quiet or shy? Then silent confidence becomes your identity. You have a choice. You can carry labels or crush them. Accept old stories or write new ones. Identity is not inherited. Identity is chosen. The future belongs to the version of you that you choose today. 2. Rewrite your routines, because routines shape identity. You don't rise to your dreams. You fall to your habits. Every time, always. If you want a new future, you must create new routines. Morning routines that anchor you. Evening routines that reset you. Daily routines that reinforce the identity you're becoming. Want to be stronger? Add a non-negotiable workout. Want to be calmer? Add structured silence. Want to be more intentional? Plan your day before the world distracts you. Want to be more disciplined? Remove excuses before they appear. Your routines are your identity on autopilot. That's the key. Now, let's talk about the biggest obstacle: apology. Too many people shrink their future because they're afraid of others' reactions. They dim their progress because they fear judgment. They hold back their growth because they worry about making others uncomfortable. They apologize for changing. They apologize for dreaming bigger. They apologize for improving their standards. They apologize for wanting more. But hear this clearly. You do not need permission to become a better version of yourself. You do not need approval to evolve. You do not need validation to grow. It's not about being liked. It's about being aligned. Aligned with your values. Aligned with your discipline. Aligned with your future. That's the key. The people who don't want you to change are the ones benefiting from your smallness. The people who judge your progress are the ones who fear your growth. The people who resist your evolution are the invested in your old identity. But this is not their life. This is not their future. This is not their identity. It's yours. And you have a choice. And that choice is made daily. Every morning you choose which version of yourself wakes up. The one chained to memory, or the one driven by intention. Identity is not fate. Identity is a decision. That's the key. Let's close this chapter with a hard truth. Your future is waiting, but it won't wait forever. There is a version of you, stronger, clearer, more disciplined, ready to step forward, ready to lead, ready to create, ready to replace old patterns with new ones. But that version of you needs one thing: your permission. Not the world's permission, not your past's permission, not your fear's permission. Your permission. Because the future belongs to the version of you that you choose today. And you must choose boldly, without apology, without hesitation, without shrinking. Choose your identity. Choose your standards. Choose your future. You're ready. Now let's build the environment that protects this new identity.
Chapter 10. Become the person you lost, and then become more. You're here now. At the final step. The step most people never reach. The step where you don't just find yourself, you rebuild yourself. You strengthen yourself. You expand beyond the version of you that once existed. Because listen closely. You're not trying to become the old you. You're becoming the evolved you, the wiser you, the disciplined you, the intentional you. You are becoming the person you lost, and then becoming more. And it starts with a simple truth. You have a choice, right now, in this moment, to stop living in fragments and step back into your core identity. That's the key. Point 1. Return to your core identity without returning to your old limitations. Let's make something clear. You don't heal just to go back to who you used to be. You heal so you can anchor yourself again. You heal so you can remember what was real in you before fear, chaos, or insecurity took over. You heal so you can reclaim the parts you abandoned. You heal so you can stop breaking your own heart by pretending you're weaker than you actually are. Because somewhere along the journey, you forgot your strength. You forgot your fire. You forgot your baseline identity, the one built on instinct and character, not external noise. But now you've walked through the chapters. You faced the wounds. You sat with the silence. You took action. You redesigned your future. You did the work most people avoid for a lifetime. So now you're ready. Ready to return to who you truly are. Not the scared you, not the tired you, not the unsure you. You're returning to the core you, the grounded you, the self-respecting you. And here's the truth you must repeat. It's not about perfection. It's about discipline. It's about showing up for the identity you choose. Not the identity you inherited, not the identity others projected onto you. You don't need their permission to rebuild a stronger version of yourself. You only need your own decision, your own commitment, your own standard. Because identity is a choice. Every day, every moment. You choose to return. You choose to rebuild. You choose to become. Point 2. Real-world examples. Strength after clarity, discipline after chaos, confidence after reconnection. Let's make this practical. Think of the person who spent years lost in chaos. Bad habits, bad environments, bad influences, bad patterns. Then they made a choice. One choice. A choice to clean their environment. A choice to set boundaries. A choice to show up differently. Clarity came. Slowly. Then strength followed. Because strength always follows clarity. That's the key. Or think of the person who lived disconnected from themselves, always busy, always distracted, always numbing, always running. Then they sat in solitude. They listened to their own voice again. They stripped away the noise. They finally heard the truth inside them. What came next? Discipline. Because when you hear your truth clearly, you can't hide from it anymore. You have to honor it. That's how discipline grows. From reconnection. Or imagine the person who lost their confidence, not because they were weak, but because they forgot their own power. They let others define them. They let old failures dictate their identity. But then they took action. Small, consistent action. New habits, new standards, new routines, new choices. Confidence didn't appear out of nowhere. It returned. Because confidence comes from alignment. Confidence comes from self-respect. Confidence comes from rebuilding who you are one disciplined action at a time. And now, it's your turn. Your turn to rise the same way. Your turn to evolve. Your turn to become more than the person you lost. Because you're not just getting back on track. You're creating a new track. A higher track. A self-chosen track.
That's the power of this chapter. That's the key to becoming more. Point 3. Repeat the final mantra and let it override the noise. You're not drifting anymore. You're not guessing anymore. You're not searching for permission anymore. You're stepping back into yourself. And here's the mantra that must anchor everything. You are returning. You are rebuilding. You are becoming. Say it again. You are returning. You are rebuilding. You are becoming. Because identity isn't something you find by accident. Identity is something you choose. Identity is something you craft. Identity is something you protect. You are returning to your power. You are rebuilding to your discipline. You are becoming your next level. You have a choice to stay small or expand, to stay wounded or grow, to stay lost or to return. And that's the key. Your future is built by who you decide to be today. Not yesterday, not last year, not in the past where you lost yourself. Today, right now. You don't need their permission to outgrow your past. You don't need their approval to rebuild your confidence. You don't need validation to rise again. You just need commitment. You just need discipline. You just need truth. That's how you step back into the identity you abandoned. That's how you evolve into the identity you're capable of. This is the final step. The return. The rebuilding. The becoming. And remember, this time you're not becoming who you were. You're becoming who you decide to be. That's the power. That's the freedom. That's the transformation. You are returning. You are rebuilding. You are becoming. And now that you've stepped back into yourself, it's time to close the loop. Time to bring the entire journey into clarity. Time to understand the final truth of your identity. Let's finish strong.
The End Code. You didn't listen to this audiobook by accident. You came here because something inside you knew the truth. You were drifting, shrinking, forgetting who you are, but not anymore. You now understand where you disconnected, what broke you, what silenced you, and what needs to be rebuilt. You know the voices to ignore, the standards to restore, the boundaries to protect, the habits to destroy, and the identity you must reclaim. You have the clarity, you have the tools, and now you have the responsibility. This journey only works if you do. So starting today, you stop apologizing, you stop disappearing, you stop abandoning yourself. You rise, you rebuild, and you return to the person you were always meant to be. Your challenge is simple. Choose yourself every day, no matter what. The rest of your life depends on it.